The Washington, D.C. sightseeing tour is an interesting and informative sightseeing tour of our nation's capital,
highlighting the National Historic Landmarks, the seat of national government, the National Mall, and the national monuments and memorials. Before starting the tour, let us first recognize three of the founding fathers of our great nation: the military genius of the Revolutionary War and first President of the United States, George Washington, the architect of our Constitution, and the first Secretary of State and third U.S. President, Thomas Jefferson, and the first U.S. Secretary of Treasury, Alexander Hamilton. The beginning of Washington dates back to 1749 with the settlement of Georgetown. Named after King George of England, Georgetown was a vibrant seaport. A Declaration of Independence from England was finally signed on July 4, 1776, which marked the beginning of the nation and the start of the Revolutionary War. This event is celebrated every year on the National Mall on the 4th of July with spectacular displays of fireworks. Following the end of the war in 1783, it was decided that the new government needed a stable and secure setting after several attacks by mutinous war veterans seeking back pay. In addition to efforts to situate the new government, a controversial constitution was ratified in 1788, and George Washington was chosen to be the first president in 1789. George Washington, pictured on a $1 bill, was the first president of the United States, the commander-in-chief, and one of the founding fathers of the United States. Thomas Jefferson, the first Secretary of State, the third U.S. President, and a Southerner, agreed to settle the new government here after much negotiation with Alexander Hamilton, the first Secretary of the Treasury. Alexander Hamilton, the first Secretary of the Treasury and a Northerner, agreed to allow the new government to be located in the South in exchange for having the war debt waived and avoiding the burden of a debt on the new U.S. economy. Alexander Hamilton, pictured on a $10 bill, and Benjamin Franklin, pictured on a $100 bill, are the only two persons to have their pictures on money who were not U.S. presidents. George Washington, a Southerner, lived only 17 miles away in Mount Vernon, Virginia. He supported the resolution because he wanted the new capital to be located in the South below the Mason-Dixon line in the state of Pennsylvania.
The Mason-Dixon line is the boundary line
separating the North from the South. A deal was struck for passage of the Residency Act of 1790, designating the site of Washington, D.C. to be the nation's capital. This act authorized the President to select a 10-square-mile tract of land along the Potomac River for the new federal city, 1791. Our nation's capital was originally called the Federal City until George Washington's death in 1799, when the name was changed to Washington, Territory of Columbia,
or Washington, D.C., and later
District of Columbia, Washington, D.C. The three principal characters appointed by George Washington to plan, survey, and design the federal district are General Andrew Ellicott, a master surveyor from Philadelphia, was appointed by Thomas Jefferson to survey the boundaries for the new federal territory of Columbia. Benjamin Banneker, a free African-American astronomer, mathematician, surveyor, farmer, and almanac publisher, was recommended by General Andrew Ellicott to be his assistant, and Thomas Jefferson, as Secretary of State, approved the appointment. Charles Pierre L'Enfant, a French architect and designer, was an outstanding architect that superb designs in New York captured the attention of George Washington. As a compatriot of George Washington, he came to America to support the new nation. He envisioned designing a magnificent city patterned after the city of Paris. L'Enfant used many squares, circles, and angles to design the new federal city as laid out by General Andrew Ellicott and Benjamin Banneker. Tour the city, we will see many squares, circles, and triangles that were according to the original design for the city. The city of Washington is a 10 square mile tract of land. We also have Lafayette Square and the huge square blocks of the monuments and memorials, of which no other structure is situated in the block. You will also see many circles that coincidentally were used during the wars to place war cannons. Some of the circles have become the sites for the equestrian statues of famous Civil War generals as Sherman, McPherson, Logan, DuPont, to name some.
Washington, D.C. is divided into 4 quadrants, with the Capitol building's rotunda as the center. The 4 quadrants are Northwest, Northeast, Southeast, and Southwest. The 4 quadrants are separated by North Capitol Street, East Capitol Street, South Capitol Street, and the Mall, and each leads directly to the U.S. Capitol building.
The numbered streets in Washington run north and south, and lettered streets run east and west. The angles in Washington are created by the diagonal avenues named after states of the Union intersecting at a circle forming an angle. LaFont envisioned these angles to serve as vistas, a view seen through a passageway.